So today, our goal is to translate that macroeconomic picture of global and regional trends into a dashboard, a working set of opportunities for SMEs. But of course, trying to translate global data into useful everyday working mechanisms is far from simple. Trying to understand what global trends mean for our business when we go back to the office tonight or tomorrow morning, that's far from simple. But it's very, very necessary. And today, this will be our quest. So I want us to start with looking at what some of those global macroeconomic trends are. So what I did was I went to the Global Business Policy Council at world-leading consultancy A.T. Kearney, and I brainstormed with some of their formidable economics experts, and we came up with what I'm going to call the poor precipice fundamentals, the poor precipice factors. Now, I believe that there are 5 of these key factors. They put us all into a worrying and challenging scenario in 2016. But I'm not going to mess around. I'm not going to pretend it's otherwise. Here are the 5 precipice factors. The first one, dragon at the edge. China's transition from investment to consumption-led growth, will it lead us all to economic Armageddon? Why does everyone always speak about China? You know, you turn on the news, all the economic news is related to China. Why is this? Let me explain. China is the only country in the world with a 75-year economic vision. Their goal was to change China from being basically a medieval agricultural economy to being the world's largest economic, fully contemporary superpower. The first stage of that process ends in 2017. And in 2017, officially, the Chinese government changes the emphasis from building the industrial path to a service-oriented path. So the service-oriented path is exactly what Western Europe decided to pursue about 35 years ago. But there's a problem. The problem is this. In 2013, 35% of all of the coal, zinc, tin, and copper in the world was consumed by China. So if you were in the supply chain of those key commodities, that's what you built your business around. The only problem is that as of 2017, China doesn't need them anymore. So already China is cutting back dramatically on its order book. I read recently in the reports published by Icor Coal, one of the most influential mining companies in the world, the market was actually down by 84% in many areas of commodities. So that's the first and worrying, challenging scenario. Let's look at the second scenario, out of ammunition. If the global economy goes beyond slowdown to critical halt, which it may do, is there enough policy ammunition and enough policy strategy for us to use? No, I would say there isn't. I don't see any nation, with the possible exception of the leading GCC states such as this one, I don't see any nation producing a coherent economic strategy document that would be sufficient to survive and prosper, given that scenario. Let's look at, for instance, what happened last year with Greece, the Grexit scenario. Let's look at what is happening now with David Cameron's UK, the threat to pull out of the EU. Now, all of that fragmentation is happening in the face of the major superpowers like China, America, Russia, preferring to deal with economic blocs, not individual entities, because you get better prices from economic blocs. And yet we see the reverse trend. We're seeing fragmentation. Where is our strategy? Well, I'm not seeing it. Let's look at the third point here, perhaps the most worrying of all. Regional conflicts in the Middle East, the South China Sea, and Ukraine will brinkmanship lead to the threat of confrontation and global world war. Disturbingly, if we look at how the major wars of the 20th century were caused, the First World War, Second World War, the Vietnam War, and the Iran-Iraq War, all with catastrophic loss of human life. They all began not through particularly severe instances, but through the brinkmanship of world powers using those states to declare war by proxy, and the rest of the world was sucked in. Is that going to happen? Well, it might. It might. We don't know. That's a real threat as we move forward. Let's look at the next point. The next breakthrough. Will there be discontinuous breakthrough in technological advance that will yield unexpected economic and social benefits? Well, yes, there might be. Let's look at two developments in 2015 that actually went largely unheralded, but which are fantastically important discontinuous breakthroughs. Firstly, in 2015, a cure was found for multiple sclerosis. It's currently undergoing clinical tests, but the use of cell stem implants in a dysfunctional neurological system seems to have 90% effectiveness as a cure for multiple sclerosis. It may also work for other forms of progressive paralysis. Secondly, in 2016, it is predicted, perhaps within the first 6 months of the year, that the first conscious, aware computer will be created. The gift of consciousness will no longer be something organic, but something that computer intelligence has. Consciousness basically means that as I'm here on the stage, I'm aware of what I'm doing. I'm speaking to you, I can think about what I'm doing as I do it. No computer in the world has ever been able to do that. That is the fundamental difference between organic life and IT. Well, now IT is making that transition. And it's going to happen probably within the next few months. It could change the world massively and forever. Let's look at the next point. Extreme weather. 2015 was a record-breaking year. The world has never seen such extreme and discontinuous meteorological events as during this year. One of the problems that weather predictors and meteorologists are finding is that it's becoming increasingly difficult to predict complex clusters of weather events. And the more complex and profound those events become, the greater the impact on worldwide economic markets. For instance, just 3 months ago, the market in New York was down for about 8 working days. The market in Chicago was down for 13 working days. Almost $1 trillion of trade lost as a result of one perfect storm. What if next year there were 4 perfect storms? What would we do? It would have an irredeemable effect on the world economy. So these, ladies and gentlemen, are some of the key challenges and factors, one of them potentially very exciting and good, that we're going to see during 2016. But the question is, how do we translate these into a working dashboard that the likes of you and I are going to use in our working life? Well, I'm privileged to say that with us today is somebody who's regarded as one of the formative and leading experts on the SME equation here in the Middle East. And it's a great pleasure to welcome to the stage the Managing Director of Global Commercial Banking for the National Bank of Abu Dhabi, Mr. Nilanjan Ray. Please, Nilanjan.